2nd of April 2025. I'm George Richardson, Chair of the Committee, and I'll be chairing today's meeting. This meeting is being broadcast live on YouTube. Before we commence the formal business, can I make sure everybody's got their mobile phones and electronic devices switched off, please? So we're now live, thank you. We have a number of officers with us this morning who I'll now ask to introduce themselves, starting with Kirsty on my right.
Kirsty Charlton, Committee Services Officer.
Neil Carter, I'm the Solicitor to the Committee.
Stephen Reid, I'm the Planning Manager, Chair.
Chris Shield, Senior Planning Officer.
Steve Pilkington, Strategic Development Manager.
Phil Harrison, Highway Development Manager.
Thank you, everyone. Moving on to the agenda. Are we any apologies for absence, Kirsty?
Councillors Bell, Jopling, Shaw and Zare.
And any substitute members?
No, Chair.
No substitutes. Anybody got any declarations of interest? No, we can move on to the minutes of the meeting held on the 5th of March 25. Could we approve those minutes? David? Thank you. Moving on to the applications to be determined. Now there's been a slight change in the order. We're starting with 5B. Some gentleman needs to go or come back from Newcastle Hospital, so it's to facilitate him. So Chris, whenever you're ready, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. This application is for the proposed eastward extension at Healands Quarry for the winning and working of 9.79 million tonnes of carboniferous limestone, continued use of the site offices and mineral processing plant, including the asphalt plant and the recycling of imported road planings and road base until 14th September 2057, and the completion of restoration by 14th of March 2059. This is a resubmission application of one we had a year previously, which was slightly larger. Following comments from our landscape and policy teams, the site was slightly reduced. Now, I do have a little update for you on the conditions before we move any further. If you want to follow along, it's conditions 31, 33 and 34. And the very minor change is that the schemes referred to in those conditions should refer to those submitted under condition 3A rather than 3B. It's just a slight change while we're drafting the report. Okay. So this is where the site's located. This is the existing site and the extension on the eastern side. The scale is quite broad here because of how remote the site is, but you can see Barncastle to the northeast and then Bowes out to the west. And the site's sandwiched between the A66 to the south and the A67 to the north. Look on the aerial, you can see the existing site, and the proposed extension is to come out east into this area here. Current working is more or less in the southeast corner of the site. And this is a slightly out-of-date aerial now, but you've got Kilnwood Quarry also to the south, which has actually progressed further to the east now. Those sites are working together there. So I've got a drone shot of the site here. This is the current processing area. You've got the A66 road in the background over here, so you can see the orientation of the site there. The processing area, as described in the original, the first slide there, would remain throughout the duration of the full application. This is the current working area, and you're looking into the extension area on the east here. And then this is looking directly east across the extension area, and you can see here this is Northside Farm, which would be demolished as part of development in the phase 2 time frame. The site access from the A66 and the access from the A67. So into the phase 1 area time frame here, you can see the orange is the stripping of the soils. North side retreat that we just showed in the previous slide is located here, so that will be retained throughout phase 1. Phase 1B is the extraction of stone from this area. As we move into Phase 2, you can see the Northside Farm has been removed now. Again, stone extraction in this area. Into Phase 3. Phase 3B, reaching final extraction point at this time. And then the site restoration, generally low level with a water body throughout most of the site, and pasture land, tree planting, etc. Now, we've received no objections from statutory and internal consultees, subject to conditions where appropriate. Have had 3 representations, which is 2 objections and 1 letter offering comments. Objectives cited concerns over noise, dust and wildlife impacts, alongside increased HGV traffic and road safety risks. Potential effects on a Roman road and the A66 stability are also raised. The quarry's high visibility from surrounding landscapes and potential property devaluation add to objections. Residents seek strong environmental protections, screening and responsible site management if approved. Now, the Campaign for Protection of Rural England, they've raised no objections but request compliance of policies on landscape protection, limestone extraction and biodiversity net gain. They've called for screening, biodiversity safeguards and policy adherence. I can confirm that we've addressed all those issues throughout the report, but if you have any questions on any of those, I'm happy to address those. So in summary, the NPPF gives great weight to the economic benefits of mineral extraction while requiring consideration of environmental impacts. Hewlands Quarry needs additional reserves to maintain aggregate supply. The proposal would contribute to the 14.3 million tonnes required by County Durham Plan Policy 49 and sustain long-term
Chair, we've
production.
moved past the summary slide. Could you just...
Oh, do apologise. Most of the extension area falls within the preferred area allocated under the County Durham Plan, as confirmed in the 2024 local aggregate assessment. CDP Policy 51 prioritises future crushed rock supply from allocated sites, but allows extensions where needed. The proposal ensures a steady supply for 32 years, mostly within allocated land, and supports the county's long-term carboniferous limestone reserves. This aligns with the NPPF by maintaining an adequate land bank. While there are some adverse impacts, they do not outweigh the benefits of maintaining limestone supply, jobs and the site restoration. The proposal would cause some localised harm to the AHLV, the Area of High Landscape Value, and non-designated heritage assets. However, the benefits, including aggregate supply, employment and biodiversity gains, would outweigh these impacts. Environmental effects, including noise, dust, traffic and cultural heritage, are being assessed and are manageable through conditions. Public objections are limited, with concerns on amenity, traffic and environmental impact addressed through mitigation measures and planning conditions. The development broadly accords with the County Durham Plan, Minerals and Waste Policies and the NPPF. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Now we have no parish or town councillors, no local members to speak, no objectors to speak. We have the applicant's agent, I think, to speak if there's any questions for them, or do you wish to speak?
Thank you. I'm John Dickinson. On the basis nobody's looking to speak against the scheme, I'm happy to not speak, but I'll answer questions as necessary. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, John. Does anyone have any questions for the applicant or John? So there's nothing for you to come back on, Christopher. We'll move straight into the debate then, please. Craig Martin, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Craig, Councillor for North Lodge and Chesty Street. As pointed out, we don't have any objectors. Well, we do have objections, but no one's come along to speak against this. I think, you know, our planning policy shows that when it comes to the extraction of minerals and goods and stuff like that for use for the industry, for jobs, etc., that there is an even higher bar in the planning balance situation than just a normal sort of housing development and stuff like that. So really objecting to something like this, which has large economic advantages for the long term for the county and the wider country, I think almost nearly impossible to object to. I'd move that we accept the planning officer's recommendation and that we accept this application, Chair.
Thank you, Craig. Anyone else wish to? Oh, Jonathan, welcome. Jonathan Elmer, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask you to put that photograph up that shows the farm building and the woodland area in front of it? That's it. That looks like a deciduous, potentially quite old woodland to me. Now, I'm absolutely happy to accept that there's an overall net gain, but presumably that has an ecological value. So I'd be grateful if you could perhaps just describe to me how a gain has been achieved, considering the fact that that's been lost.
Yes, Councillor, I think there's probably a question for John within that as well, but the application is supported by a biodiversity net gain metric, and within that we do show a net gain overall with the planting that comes through the restoration, which I'll show you at phase 3B. So there's planting throughout the site there. Yes, agreed, it is lost throughout the development, but then brought back towards the end. I don't know if that's sufficient to answer your question, but...
Well, it's all about planning balance in the end, but I would say that it's not simply, when it comes to very old woodland, replanting, you know, some of these, not always feasible to regain the value of what's been lost. They're very ancient sites that take hundreds of years to mature, so simply replanting isn't necessarily the answer.
No, I agree on that point, although this isn't actually identified as ancient woodland. I do accept your point that it is a well-established woodland in that location. The metric shows that there would be an enhancement over above what's there now.
Thanks for that, gentlemen. Anyone else wish to contribute? Jim Atkinson.
Just to not second the proposal, Chair. It's fine by me.
That's great, thank you. No one else wish to contribute? Well, I've got a mover and a seconder now. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Thank you, that's unanimous. Now we can move on to what is item 5A in effect. Stephen Pilkington will present it to us.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, so this application seeks planning permission to improve agricultural land utilising imported soil material at Spring Garding, Lanchester. The application site, edged in red, is located on Maidenlaw Bank, north of Lanchester. A closer view of the application site. You can see the highway to the west, the residential dwelling of Howden Burn to the southwest, and the residential dwellings of Wildwood and Sycamore Lodge to the north of the site. So we've got an aerial photograph. Obviously you can see the residential dwellings. And you can also see a number of agricultural buildings on the site. And there's also a public right-of-way running along to the north of the site and also to the east. So we've got a site photo looking down the bank. The location of a proposed temporary access is approximately around about here. Yeah, and you can see the property of Howden Burn just through the trees there. Here's an additional photograph looking into the site. This is an existing access into the agricultural field, and that's the property of Howden Burn. The proposed access would be just off the photograph there. We've got some photographs in the site. You can see the site is in poor condition. It doesn't really lend itself to agricultural production. Again, just some further issues. You can see some previous material that has been deposited on the site. And that is the property of Wildwood to the north of the site. The site falls in the levels of the site fall in a southerly direction. So we've got a topographical survey. You can see the level changes across the site. As I say, falling in a southern direction. There's also a small sort of valley feature, if you like, centrally within the site. We've got some proposed areas of fill, mainly centrally within the site. This have used the proposed material would be topsoil and subsoil only. An approximate 15,000 tonnes of soil is proposed to be imported. Estimated that the importation of the soil material and regrading works would be completed in around 3 months. This is the proposed restoration final levels of the site. See that the site would be regraded slightly. This would allow the planting of a crop likely to be haylage for livestock, and one of the existing agricultural sheds would be rebuilt on the southern boundary. See that. So temporary access is proposed. This will be located to the north of the existing access serving the site and would be removed no later than 6 months from the commencement of development. The condition proposing limiting traffic movements to a maximum of 50 per day is recommended. This would equate to 25 in, 25 out. So we've had objections from Lanchester Parish Council and Greencroft Parish Council on highway safety, landscape impact, and also questioning the need for the development. With the exception of the parish councils, who have no objections from statutory consultees or internal consultees, subjected conditions where appropriate. We've had 44 letters of representation received from members of the public. These are detailed in the report, but are summarised on the screen. Principally relating to the need for the development, visual impact, ecology, residential amenity, flood risk, and access issues. We've had an objection from Lanchester Partnership and CPRE, Campaign to Protect Rural Lanchester. They've objected to the scheme. So in summary, planning policy is generally supportive towards sustainable waste management initiatives, permitting recovery using inert material where agricultural land could be improved and environmental criteria satisfied. The scale of the development and timescales for completion has reduced during the course of the application. The applicant has sought to demonstrate that the minimum volume of material would be imported, and this would be the most appropriate method to improve the land. The development is carefully considered and subject to conditions where appropriate. The impacts are considered to be acceptable for the temporary period, including the impact on the HE higher landscape area designation and a non-designated heritage asset. There would be some disturbance to residential properties in the vicinity of the site. However, through conditions, these impacts would seek to be reduced and not considered to be unacceptable for the temporary period in order to achieve the benefits associated with the proposed development. And overall, the application is recommended for approval and is considered to comply with relevant planning policies.
Thank you, Stephen. We have 4 speakers on this item. From the Parish Council, we have Paul Jackson, no local members. 2 objectors, Gordon Oliveira and Simon Graham, and the supporters, Barney Corrigan. He's the applicant planning agent. So we'll start with the Parish Council. Paul Jackson, you'll have 5 minutes to speak, and Kirsty will let you know when you've got 1 minute remaining. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This is a long and detailed report with many contentious issues in it. We have studied the application from the start and consider the planning balance. Our judgments differs from the officer. Nothing leads us to change our conclusion. We strongly object to this. The application should be refused, and we've been totally consistent throughout the time in fighting this development. County Durham plan and policies about waste and the officer's report are both clear. There is no short to medium need for this site. There's no market needed to use for waste disposal. The proposal is low in the waste hierarchy. The soil is currently going to other sites within the county and continue to do so. So we say there's no need to put soil on this area. Both ourselves, together with Greencroft Parish, and are in total agreement in this opposition. There's three main concerns remain in Pacific County Durham policy and plan policy, waste policy 47, 60 and 61, delivering sustainable transport, highways and traffic policy 21, and amenities policy 31. Other areas where the application does not conform to County Durham plan policy includes landscape, flood risk, and I think everybody in this room knows the problems Lanchester has with flooding, and drainage. Also, cultural heritage and agricultural land policy 10, as well as the Lanchester neighbourhood plan policies 4B, 4C and 4D. The site is identified as an area of high landscape value, and Lanchester Parish also defines this as in the same way. Proposals as they stand do not conserve or enhance the special qualities of this landscape, and in short medium term stated by the council's own officers. The location of the site is problematic. Its history goes back decades, related to dwelling planning, not implementing the planning approval conditions, land drainage, culvert partly collapsed, no remediation taken. There's a listed building, model dairy, which is now in a deteriorated way and is almost derelict. The site is being invaded by Himalayan balsam and heading downstream towards Lanchester. Unlawful deposits in recent years, no enforcement has occurred. Officers' reports say ignorance is no defence. A pattern emerges, a prolonged period to fail to look at the land and maintain its condition and productivity. No surprise then that the report concludes that if it is approved, it will likely to be better than it is now. Yes, we understand that. But years of neglect should not be a reason to improve things, enabling planning policies to be ignored. Delivering Sustainable Transport Policy 21 and MW7, the traffic information is not always reported nor up to date. Howden Bank is a very steep bank and has numerous areas where dwellings or offtakes come and go onto the bank, and there's potentially accidents likely to occur. Turning off onto the main road also is a major problem. The application adds up to, you say, 25 lorries in, 25 lorries out. Yes, we understand that, and could last for 4 months plus, depending on the contract. So it's a significant time period. The crossroads at Maiden Law, which is just above this area, encounters traffic incidents, and there's been numerous accidents there, to such a degree that new restrictions and signage will be implemented soon by the county. Lower down the bank, we have the St. Bede School, and during the morning rush and the afternoon rush for children coming and going, this is a tremendous area of congestion, cars parked on either side of the road, restricting access. Wagons going on this route would have great difficulty. Access has been reworked several times on this site, and we feel that proposed access does not allow for additional traffic and was safely accommodated. Unacceptable adverse impact to the highways, we believe MW7 will apply. Amenities. The applicant describes the project as small scale, of short duration and low impact. Well, we disagree with that. Not the residents in the area don't feel this at all. It's not an area we're looking forward to. Also in this area is a local hospice, and this will obviously be affected by the traffic movements, and will disrupt people with end-of-life difficulties. Not a thing that we look forward to happening. Agricultural Land Policy 10. We challenge the applicant's reasoning. The land was productive in past years under previous ownership. It could be again in the future without the need to change anything. So why has the application come forward now? We believe that after so many years, the benefits to agriculture is in fact a secondary requirement here, and contrary to policy W16. And the primary intention may be financial gain or to facilitate other potential development in the future. We have no confidence in the applicant and to deliver either technically or financially. Contrary to Planning Rule W16, we believe approval would set an alarming precedent for other similar schemes throughout the county. We ask the committee to take full account and the significant adverse impact and harm resulting from this application, and please vote to refuse this application. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Paul. We've got no local members, as I said, but we've got two objectors to speak, Gordon Olivier and Simon Graham. And you'll have 5 minutes between you, 2.5 minutes each, or if one of you goes over, the clock will stop on 5 minutes. Okay, who's going first? Okay, are you Gordon?
Yes, I am.
Nice to meet you. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, first of all, for allowing me to give this speech in opposition to the proposal. I want to say how much I agree with the comments that Paul's made. In fact, he's stolen a lot of my thunder. But I had identified policies 31 and 21 as being very important contraventions by this proposal. And also, either one of those by itself should be sufficient to blow this proposal out of the water. There are three others, 47, 25 and 10, covering water management, waste management, the hierarchy that Paul referred to, and also the necessity or benefit of doing this in the first place, in an area which has been allowed to decline over many years. Let me just explain my personal interest in it. I live in Howdenburn House, which on the map shown on the screen there is in the extreme southwest corner, and it is within 12 meters of the entry and the exit point of these 25 lorries. In other words, there will be 50 lorries passing my house at a distance of 12 meters every day, except Sundays, for 4 months. I calculate that to be one every 10 to 15 minutes. I am also suffering from cancer, and I think that having to cope with that, plus hospital visits and everything else, is something more than anybody in this room would be prepared to put up with. In fact, the reason why, and thank you very much again, Chairman, for reversing the order today, the reason why I'm late for this meeting, or was likely to be late, is that I've come from the Freeman Hospital where I've had radiography. Now, I agree that in many cases personal considerations have to be overlooked if there is really a benefit arising out of the proposal. But I see no benefit. I really do not see any benefit. The poor state of the land in that football pitch area close to the applicant's residence is down to the applicant himself. It's nothing to do with ambient conditions. I have been there 40 years in that house. I have known 3 separate landowners of that property. The first one rented the land from NCB, I think the name was Jackson, actually. Unfortunately, the farmer died at the age of 41, and he had to move away. The father-in-law of the current applicant, Roy Clifford, purchased the land from the NCB. He was not a farmer, but to be fair, he was a good man, and he made every effort to use the land productively. There were cattle, and there were sheep, and there was regular haymaking. None of that, since he himself died and the ownership passed to his son-in-law, there's been no farming of any kind other than the sustenance of 6 or so horses which belong to the wife of the applicant. There is no attempt to grow hay. All the farm buildings are in a state of disrepair. And I honestly think that let's call this what it is. It's not agricultural improvement. At the very best, you'd call it land management proposal, and one which is going to cause significant damage, in 2 areas. One is what you call amenities in council language, which is the health and lifestyle of people that live in the local area. Number 2 is the actual impact or the danger to public safety that arises from having an entry and an exit point off the main road of one of the roads, in fact the road, that is described by the AA as the most dangerous road for 17 to 24-year-old drivers in the entire country. You can check that out. Just Google AA road safety Lanchester, and you'll see that this is in fact the case. There are 10. This does not mean that the road has the greatest density of road traffic accidents. There are other roads that have more. But in terms of the danger to young people, this is the greatest. Not to mention the fact that down about 100 meters south of my house, we have 47 new houses and a hospice entering the road. There is very poor visibility down the length of this road, pretty well all the way from Anfield Plain down to Lanchester, but particularly on the bend, 150 meters north of my house. Any kid speeding down that road, and it is used as a racetrack to some extent, would be turning a bend 60 meters away from where the lorries are entering and exiting from the site. So I just think on public safety grounds, it is just absolutely crazy. It's ludicrous. I really don't believe that this proposal has gone as long as this without some kind of somebody stepping in and saying this is nonsense. It should not be allowed to go forward. All the other points that Paul mentioned, including the water management, there are 2 streams that pass the area. One comes north to south past my house and then goes underground. The other one comes across from where Wildwood is, immediately across, straight across, diagonally across where the site works are proposed. It also goes underground. We all know about the water management problems that are faced, not just in the immediate local area, which is a high flood risk area, but also Lanchester down below. And if you recall, when the applicant commenced dumping waste in this area in 2020, I think, for a period of months before residents objected and it was stopped. And that was without permission, by the way. It was without permission. The applicant actually said that this was because he was in ignorance of the need to get permission, which seems to me pretty bloody weak, if you're honest. I think you have to put some faith in public bodies like Durham County Council to protect residents and also to protect road safety in the area. I think it's been amply demonstrated. I hope I'm approaching my last minute or so. I come back then to the necessity. We would be able to put up with, residents would be able to put up with inconvenience if this was a demonstrable benefit, but there isn't. This is a land management proposal in which the only beneficiaries are the building contractors themselves, obviously, and the no doubt well-remunerated landowner himself. So really, I have to rest my case on that. You, as a council, have to look after your residents, and you have to make sure that road safety is observed. I rest my case.
Thank you. I hope you realise I've given you far extended time to what I should have done. Do we have Simon Graham here? I can't allow you 2.5 minutes, but I'll allow you an extra 2 minutes.
It's okay, I'm not objecting. I am actually for it. I'm the applicant.
Oh, okay, you're down as an objector on my sheet. But have I got Barney Corrigan?
Barney is my representative, but I'm speaking for him today.
You're speaking for him? So, yeah, so you'll get the same amount of time as Gordon had.
I don't need that. You're okay.
Yeah. Will you knock your microphone off, Gordon, please?
Sorry?
Will you knock your microphone off, please?
Oh, my apologies.
Right, okay.
Sit down. Good morning and hello. My name is Simon Graham, and along with my wife Gillian, we are applying for the planning approval. The reason for this application started over 6 years ago, possibly more. Footpath between the fields collapsed, which was due to storm. The erosion has eaten away the fields, causing the trees and the surrounding areas to die and fall, resulting in damage in our fences gateways. This has made the area in question impossible for grassland management, harrowing, topping, seeding, fertilising and spraying. This is not only cosmetic, but necessarily able to move forward and be able to rotate the livestock and grass and haylage. The area in question is the most important field to the farm. It connects the adjacent fields, the access to the yard, the sheds and the handling and movement of livestock. And finally, I would like to say the length of time, misleading comments from surrounding neighbours and areas and the mental impact has been exhausting, let alone the cost of the application exceeding £37,000 when all we want to do is improve the betterment of the land, our developing farm business and move forward as a family, whilst also putting back to the countryside with new hedges and trees, replacing all the old ash dieback trees. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. That was very brief. Do you want to come back with anything, Stephen?
No, I think if we just, I'll just answer members' questions as and when they come. Thanks, Chair.
Right, over to members' questions. Craig, and then Jonathan, you have a question.
Yeah, Chair, I have a question to the objectors. So, just to put a bit of context to the question, that I don't know the history of this land, apart from what I've read, etc., in the documentation and driving past it. To me, this looks like wasteland. Yes, it's got grass growing on it, it's green, but it doesn't really serve any purpose. And to me, anything could be done to this land. There's a risk they could build houses on it, etc., do anything with it, all right? The objectors listed loads of issues with the land about how it's not being maintained, collapsed culvert, etc., years of neglect. So I just don't quite get the arguments that the objectors are giving in terms of, you know, don't get me wrong, with all planning applications, there is always some form of harm. And as set out in this application, there's going to be a 4-month period of harm that they will have to live with in terms of as the work is done to this site. But with that harm, effectively what you're doing with this land is giving it long-term agricultural sustainability. And, you know, the number of applications we see here where we're losing agricultural land and people are jumping up and down and saying we can't lose agricultural land, it's terrible, etc., etc. And so in a couple of sentences, why are the objectors objecting to the long-term sustainability of agricultural land that protects this land and protects the view and everything like that for the long term, Chair?
Thank you, Craig. Jonathan, over to you next, please.
I'm afraid I've got a completely opposite take on it than the one you've just heard. It's left me with quite a lot of confusion because the quantity of soil being imported onto this site would be extremely expensive and would no way would be possible to ever cover that cost through future use of the site for haylage. So there's an odd situation going on here, and what is actually being imported onto that site is key to the question. Obviously, the application actually talks about imported soil materials, but can we potentially use a condition to ensure that that is what is imported onto the site? So I guess my question actually in relation to this is that, is this an application for agricultural improvement, or is this actually an application for to enable waste management?
Yeah, well, I'll answer that best I can, as in, you know, maybe the applicant can clarify that. But yeah, ultimately, the end result is that there is an agricultural improvement to the land, but clearly, in order to achieve that, the applicant would be importing this waste in terms of soil and topsoil, which I think comes off development sites, the housing sites, that needs to be managed, and that would facilitate that improvement. But clearly, there's a
Soil and topsoil isn't waste.
Yeah.
It's extremely expensive to purchase.
Yeah, and I think what you find is a lot of development sites will, you know, they will retain some topsoil or some of the more quality soil on the site to reuse on the site. I'm talking about housing development sites or, you know, commercial sites where they're removing a lot of the subsoil and the topsoil, and we do find across the county that it is needed to be treated as waste and accordingly sort of managed.
I mean, as I say, it's expensive to purchase soil, especially topsoil. The proposal for agricultural improvement by importing topsoil is simply not financially viable. So I think it's likely that something else is going to be put in this site, which makes it actually an application for the disposal of waste.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's for me to sort of comment on the sort of the viability of that. Clearly, I'm sure the applicant, has some sort of agreement with some sort of developer or what have you to sort of import that material. But what I can say is that in terms of the planning conditions, so condition 16 limits that to the material that's imported to be soils in terms of topsoil and subsoil, and before the importation of that soil, that testing is required to make sure that is appropriate. So there is some control on that, but yeah, I can't really answer in terms of the viability of that exercise.
Thank you, gentlemen. Jim Atkinson.
Chair, I have to say that's a bit of a curveball for me. That I was looking at an application here for a site where a family live, and they want to improve it. And looking at the pictures, looks like it could do with a bit of improvement. Any family that's paid to live there is entitled to tidy up or, improve the conditions of for themselves and in and around themselves. So from that perspective, I mean, I was thinking at that point there where we're talking about waste, soil and topsoil, all the involvement I've ever had with soil and topsoil was just soil, effectively for the use that it's in the application for.
We're still asking questions, Jim. Can we have your question, please, before we go into the debate?
Well, this would end up with a question being, are we talking about soil or some demolition site, waste disposal site?
Soil. Yeah, so it is soil. That is the proposal in the application. That's what the conditions would restrict to. And I think just for clarity, in regulatory terms, the removal of soil from a let's just say, I'm generalising, a stripping of a sort of a development site, it is classified as waste. That has been discarded and becomes waste until it has a future use. So although it is soil, technically it is classed as waste.
Thank you, Jim. Simon, can you add anything to that to benefit us or not?
Well, yes, it's going to be whack tested. It's clean soil and clear. We're not using it to do anything else. We're just level the fields so we can have haylage to horses. And the reason we're putting it there is because we have other fields, but at the minute the fields are used by horses, and we would like livestock, we'd like some cattle again, as my father-in-law had it. But you can't move one to another field because there's no other fields to move them to. We've got 3 fields at the bottom, which isn't enough to bring in cattle and livestock. So what this field would be a holding field, and it'll be access to the other fields. And purely it's outside our house as well. It's very unsightly, I agree. It's not what I want to look at every day, but at the minute I've got an opportunity to level it with clean soil, and that's it. Put a new fence around, hedges, and at some point, maybe next year, once the soil's settled and the seed's grown through, you can have cattle, have horses on it. That's all we want to do.
Thank you, that's a good explanation. Any further questions before we go into the debate? No, well, we'll now open it up to the debate for the committee to discuss. David Boyes.
Thanks, Chair. David Boyes representing Easington, but I'm very familiar with this area because I've got connections here. My concerns are twofold. One, the traffic, and I think it was mentioned by the parish councillor and the objector, just how dangerous this road is. It's a winding, narrow road. It goes from 30 up the top of Maiden Law, but then it goes to 60. And as somebody who's been involved with driver education for a long time, I won't take people on that road. It's just far too dangerous as a driving instructor. Now, if you're going to have this volume of wagons coming in every few minutes, I think this is going to be an accident waiting to happen, especially in the winter when the roads are slippier and icier. I think there could be major problems on the traffic perspective. The other issue, I'm not really happy with the report so far in terms of flooding. Now, it's well documented what happened to Lanchester 2 summers ago, when in fact it received international coverage, the flooding down there. Now, if this could contribute to the flooding that's coming down the hill to Lanchester, I can't see how this is going to help. I've got my issues which I've got concerns about, so I would like the officer to sort of see if he can answer those for me.
Philip, you're sitting there doing nothing. It's time we had some highways info, please.
Thanks, Chair. I'll just say, but we have to acknowledge that this is an A road. It carries over 8,000 vehicles a day. So in terms of the two parts of the bit of the MPPF that we need to be looking at, if members were minded to go for refusal, first one is cumulative impact. Well, actually, the percentage of vehicles, 50 vehicles a day, two-way movements is very, very small. So I think that would be very difficult to substantiate. Secondly, I've heard what the objectors have said, but this is not supported by accident data that we hold as a council. We have an accident database which is maintained by the council's road safety and the police. And what we have is one minor accident in the last 5 years in the vicinity of the site. So again, I think a road safety issue would be very difficult to substantiate based on the records.
Quickly come by, is that where the blue light services have got involved? Is that where your data you're collecting? Because I know of 3 accidents that's happened there in the last few weeks.
It is, yes. That's how it's collected, but they're the official stats, so it's very difficult to support a planning application where an appeal where an inspector will be looking for accident statistics based on anecdotal evidence. So we have to go off the official database, which shows one minor accident.
And that's where the blue light services have been involved?
Yeah, or there's notification of damage, yeah.
Thank you, gentlemen. Anyone else wish to contribute?
It's about the flooding, whether, the second part about effects on flooding.
Yeah, sure. Just before I get to the flooding, I'll just point out the screen on the projector there. So new access is proposed to the site. This would be created before the development commences and would be removed after. So, this would, be an improvement of that existing access, but that would facilitate that those vehicles coming in and out. In terms of the drainage, so yeah, flood risk assessment has been submitted by the applicant, which has been reviewed by our drainage and coastal protection team, who ultimately don't object to the application. There is a water course on the site that would need to be modified, and there needs separate consent through our coastal drainage and coastal protection team through that. But yeah, the advice is that this wouldn't need to increase risk of flooding elsewhere.
Just a question from myself for you, Paul Jackson. I've been in Lanchester when there were floods. I've got the largest vehicle, so I could get through, whereas other cars were fizzling out. With you being a local person, does the water come from every angle, or does it come from Maidenlaw in particular, or Cadgerbank area in the other?
Sorry, Chair. Unfortunately, Lanchester being in the position it is, the bottom of the valley, every bank that we have in Lanchester, it comes from. Howden Bank particularly is one of the major banks, and a long bank itself, and water does come down that way and significantly affect the village area. So yes, it's a serious problem.
Thank you. Who else wants to? Jim Atkinson, thank you.
We are on the debate now, George. Yes. Correct. Right. Well, just from what I've listened to this morning, I see a family trying to do something with the space that they own, and there is a big distinction, as far as I'm concerned, relative to what's waste. I mean, I can see where you could class soil as waste, but I would never class topsoil as waste. What I class as waste is something with tin cans in it, and beds and scrap and all sorts. That's not waste to me. This looks like a genuine attempt to tidy up a property that you've spent money on. And, I mean, there's also been a suggestion this is going to cost money. Somebody's prepared to spend a fair bit of money on this, and it'll tidy the whole place up. And as far as that goes, and the roads coming in, we all live in places where it's difficult to get wagons in from time to time, but when people are improving the properties round about them, it improves the value of everything around them. Not just the property that they're tidying up for themselves. And getting, I mean, we've just built 2 or 3 schools in my ward, and we've got another one getting built now, and there's a bit of inconvenience. But it goes away when everything's finished, and when everything's finished, everything looks good. It benefits most of the people around about. It's not often it doesn't benefit anybody at all. So, and unless the officer can tell me some of these policies that alluded to being breached are correct, then I would go with the recommendation that the officers have approved.
And you're proposing that? Thank you, Jim. Jonathan Elmer next.
Yeah, I guess I'm still left with some residual concerns in relation to this. It's a void, and the proposal essentially is to fill that void and level it out using high-quality agricultural materials. Now, that's just not what you would do in order to fill a void and make it agriculturally improved at the end of the day. You'd use an inert material and then top it with a high-quality material. If anybody seeking to improve this for agricultural purposes would go through
Jonathan,
that process.
that's just what's been described. They've talked about putting subsoil in. You wouldn't put subsoil on the top. You would put subsoil waste, as it's called, in the bottom, and then top it off with topsoil.
Yeah, I don't think that has been what's described here, unless I've misinterpreted things dramatically. We haven't been told about the grade of the soil and what will be placed where. It feels to me that, you know, this is an attempt simply to gain an income from enabling people to dispose of inert materials.
Simon, are you purchasing this soil to improve your land, or is it going to be brought in to help someone else out?
I'm purchasing the soil to improve my land.
Does that answer your question, Jonathan?
Yes, it does, Chair. Thank you.
Simon, could you knock your microphone off, please?
Sorry.
Pressing buttons. Craig Martin, thank you.
I will second Councillor Atkinson's motion, Chair.
Anyone else wishing to contribute? Well, we've got a motion proposed and seconded to approve. All those in favour, show your hands, please. All those against? That's gained approval. Thank you very much. And that's the end of today's meeting. If you just wait a minute or two till we get switched off with the YouTube.